Fiancé vanishes after leaving me with his sick son. Now his parents have disowned him and given me their house. For over 8 months now, I, F32, have been engaged to my fiancé, M38. For the past year, we have shared accommodation in his house. From his former marriage, he has a 7-year-old autistic kid who suffers regular illness. The lad requires much extra care and attention. My fiancé received a call from his ex-wife last week from another state, around a 6-hour drive away. He informed me he needed to go assist her since there was some kind of emergency. Although they don't often interact outside of talking about their son's care, I was shocked. Nevertheless, I knew that crises arise, so I said okay. That same day he left, declaring he would most likely return in 2 to 3 days. He still hasn't returned after 1 week. Every day I have been phoning him, and he always says the same: he will be back shortly, and it is taking longer than intended. He never provides me any specifics regarding what is really happening though. I am here alone looking after his son in the meantime. It's rather difficult. Though I'm not equipped to manage his particular requirements, I still care about the lad. He experiences meltdowns for which I have no idea how to control. He has been sick with a fever for the past few days, which is frightening since I do not know his medical history well. He needs help with simple chores that I am not always sure how to accomplish. Every day I'm growing more agitated and concerned. Why won't my fiancé inform me about the emergency's nature? Why is that so slow? I'm beginning to question whether something else is going on or whether there is truly an emergency at all. When I ask him straight what the issue is, he responds evasively, saying, "It's complicated," or "I'll explain when I get back." Not sure what to believe. He's shielding me from terrible news, but another part of me is dubious that he may be lying about the whole event since I feel as though something significant has happened. Dealing with his son around the clock wears me out. Though this is far more than I signed up for, I love the boy. I am not his parent, hence I am not suited to be his only caregiver for a long run. I worry I might do something wrong and botch up. Furthermore, upsetting me is my fiancé's lack of apparent awareness of how challenging this is for me. He hardly asks how we're doing when I phone. He has not volunteered to return or forward someone else to assist. Like he has forgotten about us. What to do is unknown. Though I'm at my wit's end, I can't leave his son alone. Though I'm scared about overstepping or creating trouble, I'm thinking about phoning the parents of my fiancé to see if they might come help. If there is a legitimate crisis my fiancé is handling, I also want not to humiliate him. Am I overreacting? Should I be more patient, or is this as strange as it feels to me? I am beginning to doubt our relationship overall. What does it say about his dedication to me and our future if he could simply leave us like this without saying anything? I would much benefit from any guidance. Has anyone found themselves in a similar circumstance? What action ought I to take? Yes, this exploded overnight. I appreciate your replies and support overall. I'll try to address some often asked questions. I have tried texting him, yes. He answers, but in the same evasive manner. No, I do not have his ex-wife's contact information. I have never run across her. Although his son is in special education, right now school is off for summer vacation. Part-time from home, I have been able to look after him around the clock. Together for 2 years overall, my fiancé and I have for much of that time, I have known his son. Yet I have never been left alone with him for more than 1 day before. Many of you advise me to run a welfare check by phoning the police in his ex-wife's city. Though I'm thinking about it, should a family emergency arise, I worry about starting trouble. I believe I should let him 1 more day to provide me with a proper justification. If he doesn't, I'll attempt first to call his parents and then think about phoning the police. A few of you have wanted further history on our relationship and his past marriage. I will relate what I know. My fiancé spent 9 years married to his ex-wife. When their kid was 4, they divorced. From what he has told me, their split was much influenced by the burden of raising a child with special needs. Depressed and feeling overwhelmed, his ex-wife battled. They chose to split even though they first considered counseling. Though it wasn't very nasty, the divorce wasn't really neat either. Their differences were mostly related to how their son was cared for and housed. They finally decided on my fiancé having main custody. His ex visits 1 weekend a month and for 1 week during summer and winter breaks. According to my fiancé, his ex-wife struggles with his requirements even if she loves their son. She agreed to limited custody for this reason. She is usually late, but pays child support. Although my fiancé doesn't enjoy talking about mom, he has noted that since the divorce she has struggled personally. Though he never mentioned specifics, I sensed he meant mental health or perhaps drug problems. My fiancé had been divorced roughly a year when we first met. He told me straightforwardly that he had a special needs child and made sure I knew what I was entering. I respect his top focus, his son, as I have always known about it. I enjoy one of his qualities most of all. He is a fantastic, committed father. Our relationship grew really rapidly. Following a year of dating, we moved in together and he proposed 4 months later. Things have been rather decent generally. He treats me kindly, is diligent and is, until now, we had few big difficulties adjusting to life as a blended family. That's why this situation is so confusing and damaging. He leaving us like this and being so quiet are absolutely against his nature. I kept thinking whether I missed any red flags or indicators along the road. Since many have inquired, a few more specifics regarding his son. He is 7 years old. Mostly using a tablet software and some simple signs, he speaks when his schedule is thrown off or he becomes overstimulated. He is prone to meltdowns. His many dietary allergies and sensitivities call for a specific diet. He also has epilepsy, which is largely under control with medication but still causes sporadic episodes. He physically is tiny for his age and exhibits some motor skill deficits. He needs assistance with restroom use, dressing and bathing. He wears pull-ups at night and occasionally throughout the day should we be out for a protracted period. During the academic year he attends a special education program offering speech therapy, occupational therapy, and other services. Usually, he needs continuous supervision even at home. He regularly wakes up several times a night and struggles to fall asleep. I have before assisted in his care, but always with my fiancé at hand. Being totally accountable for him is the first thing I have done, and it is taxing. Doing something incorrectly or neglecting a sign indicating he requires medical attention terrifies me. Some have advised me to ask his therapist or doctor for guidance. That's a good suggestion. I'll probably do that today. I'll compile a list of all his doctors and try to find some direction. About the following actions with my fiancé, I'm not sure. Though another part of me feels like this is unforgivable, regardless of the cause, another part of me wants to provide him the benefit of the doubt. I'll fall asleep on it and decide whether to call the cops or his parents first thing in the morning. I appreciate once more all of your guidance and encouragement. When I get additional data, I'll update. Update 1, though not fantastic news, I have an update. This morning, I broke down at last and phoned the parents of my fiancé. They knew he was even out of town, but not that startled, they drove right over to assist their grandson. I made the decision to bite the bullet and call the police department in his ex-wife's city to ask for a welfare check while they were en route. The cop I spoke with indicated they would send someone to her address and was quite sympathetic. About 1 hour later, the cops phoned me back. They claimed to have corresponding contacts with my fiancé and his ex-wife. Both are good. No emergency exists here. Privacy rules prevented the officer from providing additional specifics, but he stressed that there was no proof of any crime or threat. My fiancé called at last as I was organizing this information with my future in-laws. He stated he was going home right away to personally explain everything since he understood I must be angry and perplexed. He advised me to wait to make decisions until we could personally discuss things. Not sure what to believe. Though I'm glad he's all right, I also become enraged and offended. With this kind of abandonment of us, what possible reason could there be? Like me, his parents are equally perplexed and offended. They have volunteered to stay with us till he returns, late tonight. Although I appreciate their assistance with their grandson, I am dreading the upcoming conversation. Our whole relationship seems to have been brought into doubt. Once we talk, I will update once again. I appreciate your help during this insane scenario. Update 2. For hours I have been looking at my desktop attempting to come up with the correct words to describe what happened. I promised to let you all know, so here goes. My hands are shaking as I type this and I still find it difficult to believe it's real. Rather than arriving home as promised last night, my fiancé phoned. I replied right away, relief flooding me at the sight of his name on my phone. That kind of relief was fleeting. I'm not coming home, he said with a strange calmness. I'm staying here with Sarah. The woman he'd claimed required emergency assistance, his ex-wife. I thought of myself as having been stabbed in the gut. What do you mean you're not coming home? I was able to choke out. What about your son? What about us? He stopped long before speaking once more. We have decided to attempt our marriage once more, Sarah and I. After our past week of reconnecting, both of us believe this to be the appropriate course of action. I found it difficult to breathe, it cannot be occurring this way. But your son? I said, stuttering. She requires you. He has autism. He depends on consistency and schedule. You cannot just walk away from him. Still another wait. His voice was lower, almost embarrassed as he spoke once again. We have discussed it, and while we are repairing our relationship, we believe it would be too challenging to look after a child with such great requirements. For now, we believe he would be best staying with you and my parents. I came upon crimson. The man I knew, the committed parent I had grown in love with, would never say something like this. Would not forsake his child, particularly one with special needs. Your autistic son is inconvenient for your new life plans. You are leaving him? I snarled, anger replacing my surprise. Who are you? Right now I hardly know you at all. I wasn't listening while he tried to defend his behavior. I told him precisely how disgusted and damaged I felt. I called him a liar, a coward, a horrible father. I informed him I would be letting the authorities know his son had been abandoned. Weakly protesting, "You cannot do that." I grabbed and hanged "Watch me." My head whirling, I sat there in startled quiet for a few minutes. Then I turned behind me and heard a little voice. "Where's Daddy?" I turned to find her fiancé's son clutching his iPad at the doorway. My heart started to break once more. How would I approach explaining this to him? I got him back to bed using hazy assurances that Daddy would be home shortly. Though I had no other to say, it felt like a lie. I phoned my fiancé's parents once he was asleep. Arriving an hour later, they looked perplexed and frightened. I told them everything and got them seated. While I spoke, his father's face grew redder and redder. His mother broke down crying. When I finished, his father thundered, "What about his son? That would be too difficult, too challenging?" "I'll demonstrate the challenge." Tears flooding her face, his mother was shaking her head. "I don't understand," she said repeatedly. "This is not at all like him. More than all, he adores that boy." Most of the evening we stayed up, alternately feeling loss, uncertainty and rage. By daybreak, we had a strategy. First we visited the police station. When we described the circumstances, the cops were somewhat worried. They stated they would be looking at child abandonment and gathered through statements from every one of us. "We treat cases involving special needs children very seriously," the detective reassured us. "We shall be thoroughly investigating this." We next spoke with a lawyer to go over custody choices. I didn't have legal rights to his son as my fiancé and I weren't married. As next of kin though, his parents might seek emergency custody. The attorney got right on the paperwork. My phone was blowing out messages and missed calls from my fiancé all through this. I paid them all little attention. His voice and his justifications made me sick. His folks settled me down at the kitchen table when we arrived home. Though they appeared worn out and damaged, their eyes gleamed with a steely will. "We have made a decision," his father remarked, his voice austere but emotionally charged. "We're drowning him." I blinked unexpectedly. "Are you clear? That is a major stride." His mother nodded, blotting away a tear. "We cannot respect what he has done, abandoning his child and lying to all of us. It is unchangeable. Even though he is our kid, we want nothing to do with someone who would do that. Our son raised him better than this," his father said. "I know I can't call someone who would abandon their special needs child son. I'm not sure what's gotten into him." I nodded, too familiar with their suffering and resentment. "We wanted to also discuss the house and our grandson," his mother said. "We want you to remain here for as long as is necessary. We understand this has been rather shocking, and we want you not to have to worry about where to live on top of all else." I started to object, but she held a hand to halt me. "Please let us handle this. We know our grandson trusts you and you have been quite wonderful. If he stays here with you for now, where things are familiar, we believe it would be best. We want him to have as much stability as possible, hence we will take custody but..." Tears welling up in my eyes made sense. Particularly in the middle of their personal suffering, their generosity was astounding. "Thank you," I managed to whisper. The following several days passed as a haze of activity. We visited social workers, spoke with lawyers extensively, and had many sessions with the kid of my ex-fiancé attempting to explain what was occurring in words he could grasp. Seeing his uncertainty and anguish was terrible. Not understanding why his dad wasn't returning home, he kept asking for him. Though we did our best to console him, how would you explain to a 7-year-old autistic boy that his father had left him? My ex kept text messaging and calling. At last I read some of his messages. They combined requests for understanding, apologies, and defenses. He said he still loved his son but felt this was for the best. He mentioned that Sarah and he were intending to start over in another state. Saying it would just complicate matters, he urged me not to notify the authorities. I ignored all of it. Instead, I forwarded every correspondence to the investigator working on the matter. The days stretched into weeks, and we adjusted to a different schedule. Parents of my ex visited daily to assist with their grandson. Knowing how vital routine was to him, we cooperated to keep his calendar as nearly perfect as we could. I put myself into studying all I could on raising an autistic child. I visited with his doctors and therapists, joined internet support groups and read books. Though at times it was overwhelming, I was resolved to do right by this small child who had gone through so much. Through it all, his grandparents were really outstanding. They were there for every minor triumph, every sleepless night, every meltdown. Though I knew they were still working through their own loss and resentment over their son's behavior, they never grumbled. About 1 month after everything transpired, one evening I was sitting on the porch after at last getting my ex's son asleep. His granny came out to sit next to me. "How are you holding up, sweetheart?" she questioned softly. I grumbled and ran a hand over my hair. "I'm managing. Though difficult, we are moving toward it." She nodded, stroking my hand. "You are doing a really wonderful job. We really appreciate you staying by our grandson through all of this." Tears were pricking at my eyes. I said, "I love him, simply. I could not see walking away, no matter how hard it gets." She mumbled a sorrowful grin. "That's what it means to be a parent overall. It's unfortunate our son found that incomprehensible." We watched the stars emerge in companionable silence for some time. She finally asked, "Have you heard anything more from him?" I gave my head a shake. "Not since last week." Trying to defend himself, he sent another protracted email. I answered none. She let out a big sigh. "I never thought I would say this about my own child, but now he has to live with the repercussions. He made his choice." I nodded, caught in a mixture of resentment and grief. "I keep wondering if there were signs I missed, if I should have seen this coming somewhat." She put her hand between mine. "Don't treat yourself in such a way. Nobody of us saw this approaching. He tricked every one of us." Sitting there, I started to consider how much had changed in not too long. 1 month ago, I felt I understood the course of my future. I was planning to start a life with a man I loved, be stepmother to his special needs son, and be married. Future vanished from us now. In place of it was something I never would have thought possible. Along with his parents, I was staying in the house of my ex-fiancé helping to raise his baby. Therapy visits, meltdown control, and innumerable little problems occupied my days. Though it was not the life I had intended, I discovered as I sat on the porch that it was one I was beginning to adore. This small child had totally captured my heart since his own father had left him behind. His grandparents, who had every right to leave this disaster, had accepted me as family instead. Yes, there were times when I wanted to yell at the unfairness of it all, but there was also love and purpose and a sense of belonging I hadn't expected to discover following such betrayal. Regarding my ex-fiancé, I have heard via the grapevine that he and his ex-wife did in fact relocate outside of state. The cops are still looking at things. His acts probably have legal ramifications. Though generally I just hope he stays away, part of me hopes he will face justice for what he has done. We are all resolved to show his son the love and stability he requires. He deserves better. I have no idea what the future presents. Though I'm precisely where I need to be right now, helping to care for a small kid deserving of all the love in the world. I'm not sure whether I can ever completely understand why my ex did what he did. I appreciate all of your help over this somewhat challenging period. More than you could have ever imagined, your kind comments and guidance have meant I want to concentrate on our new family dynamic and give my ex's son all the care he needs, hence I might not update again for some time, but know that your support has truly changed our life. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next." Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. "If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you." I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hope to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.